Welcome to the Detailer's Dock, anchoring you in the world of marine detailing. Whether you're a seasoned detailer or just starting out, this is where every detail matters, with your host, Captain Ken Mercer from Marine Detail Supply Company.
Hey, y'all. Welcome to the next episode of the Detailer's Dock, and this is going to be another special one for all you detailers out there. I have Erik and Kenny from Infinity Marine, all the way from the North Shore of Boston. It's a little cold up there, doesn't it?
It does. Bunch of different services that we offer, hence the Infinity Marine. Detailing is our bread and butter, but we have done well doing many other things depending on the seasonality of what's needed. I started in the industry in 2013. Quickly realized because of the seasonality of it that it's underserved during the springtime and there's plenty of opportunity for it. Most marinas where we are, they subcontract out a lot of the work. So I started working for a guy, basically going around to all the yards, built up relationships, and years later started my own thing. Built up the skills and kind of took off from there.
Right. So, and then to your left there, we got Kenny, right? Nice. So you're a little outnumbered today because you got two Kens on the podcast there. So I think you're the minority of the actual podcast here today. So before we get like diver deeping into, Infinity Marine and everything like that, like Kenny, kind of give us like your background as well.
Yeah, so I've been doing this now for about 3.5 years. I never had any prior knowledge of doing this, and it really just started out as me looking for work. Yeah, I've been here for, like I said, 3.5 years.
So you've been working 3.5 years for Erik for Infinity Marine as well, right? So what did you do before that?
I did landscaping, any type of labor work for the most part, and
Right.
a lot of different fields. But I did landscaping. I used to work inside of supermarkets. I worked in an old age home, and yeah, this is kind of where.
Pretty much like all of us growing up, right? Had some, the jobs that kind of like build our character and then kind of find a profession that we, really love and do, right? So like, how did you two meet?
I had Colin, his good buddy worked for me,
Yep.
and a referral through a friend, more or less. Kenny came in during the fall, what was it, 2021, and we started shrink wrapping. So he
Right.
started off shrink wrapping, and then came back the next spring, and we've been rocking and rolling ever since.
So, that's something that I'm not too familiar with or not an expert in is the shrink wrapping world. So, if you guys wouldn't mind, like, kind of elaborate, maybe what the process is, like, how does somebody get into shrink wrapping? Why do those people up north do shrink wrapping? Because I'm here in Florida, guys. Like we boat 365 days out of the year. Okay, I know it's a little different than you guys up there in Boston, but I mean, right now you get to experience the beautiful Florida weather, right? So you're here at the headquarters, and
I'm sure there's probably some transport wraps that happen down here.
yeah,
That's probably the most of it. But when you do a transport wrap, you don't do any framing or anything like that. You just pull the wrap, you tape it down, and you pretty much send it. Essentially, so I'll start off by saying I started off detailing first, and then through the relationships with the marinas, you become a reliable, dependable guy.
right.
When other opportunities present themselves, you're the first person that comes to mind. So it's easy to pick up additional skills and additional services as you go, as long as you have good relationships with whoever's giving you the work.
Sure.
So we go in and we'll shrink wrap with 200 boats in one yard. We shrink wrap every single boat. So we're basically adjunct employees at the marina. So they'll basically go through, winterize them, get them all ready. And then we come in, we use 2x3s and tie those down and do strapping right over the
So
top.
two guys like
Essentially,
wood pieces,
yeah,
2x3.
and which, connects to the strapping that goes over the top, almost like a mohawk going over the whole boat. And then you tie it all down with strings, lock it in place, you pull the wrap over it, and then you shrink it down with a blowtorch, to put it simply.
Like generally, if you're doing, say, I don't know, what's your average boat up there? I guess average size.
They probably don't get much more than 50 feet in the marinas that we work at.
Okay.
Over, there are some 60, 70 footers, but most of them will come down south during the winter. They don't really do dry storage. So we primarily do anything from a 13-foot little whaler all the way up to like a 45-foot tuna tower, bridge, things like that.
So would you say rough average 28, 30 footer?
Yeah, I would say the most volume we do is probably like low 30s, high 20s.
So typically how long, of a job is it? Where do you got 2 guys, 3 guys? How many people are on it?
Can do it solo. It's not ideal trying to put up posts and tie things down. There are certain techniques to do it, but it's not as efficient.
Right.
Having one guys is good. 2's a crew. 3 can get a little cluster sometimes and less efficient, but 2 is usually the best way to do it. We can knock out with 2 guys. The benefit is they line them up next to each other, so you can be pulling wrap on one while framing up another one.
Okay.
Everyone has their role as one person's framing, one person's shrinking, and kind of do it like that. So we can do between 5 and 6 30-footers in a day with 3 guys, I would say.
And what would you say is like the average cost? I mean, you don't have to give me your hard number, but you can kind of give like a range of what it costs somebody to
Yeah,
shrink wrap.
so the end all price, I mean, it varies. Some guys that do it mobily will charge cheaper for smaller boats. Obviously, as you get up in size, you get more square footage and the cost of material goes up. So similar to detail, and as you get to, if you charge it by foot, which a lot of people do, as you grow in length, you grow in square footage, so you have to increase the per foot rate, more or
Okay.
less.
That makes sense.
The material expense for wrap is expensive. It's not cheap. You can't really reuse it. You can reuse it, but as a professional, you're better off just cutting it and redoing it to reduce liability of it maybe failing. But typically, a customer would spend with a 30-foot boat close to $1,000 to wrap their boat, of which the material expense is probably like 35% roughly.
And they normally, like up in your area, is it, staying wrapped for about 4 months out of the year, 5 months out of the
Yeah,
year?
so we start wrapping, I would say mid-October, and then that depends how fast you go. Some people wrap into January, February. I don't like doing that because by that time you're getting some bad storms and things get a lot colder and you're tying knots, and so it gets a lot more challenging. We try and get done the week before Christmas, so October to December, mid-December. Yeah.
Kenny, how comfortable you are doing those too? Do you like doing those? Do you prefer doing the detailing work more? I mean,
That's a good question. I'd say the detailing pays more and it's a better time of the year for that. But every year when we get to the fall and we do shrink wrapping, it's definitely a good change of pace. Definitely easier on the body, I would say.
yeah.
I always say there's nothing like shrink wrapping season.
Yeah.
The fall weather in New England in general is great.
Right.
October, November, even early December, it's great. The difference between the springtime and the fall is everyone wants their boats in the water yesterday in the springtime.
Correct.
So there's a rush.
Which is what you guys are going through right now,
Which
right?
we're just starting that. As soon as we fly back tonight, it's, we're all in. But in the fall time, you do want to get it done by a certain time, but there's not as much pressure. You can kind of space it out a little bit more and get in a consistent rhythm schedule, which is a nice change of pace compared to the spring rush,
So what are some challenges that maybe you guys face, like after you pull off the shrink wrap, right? What's that process look like? Is it, what are you facing with? Is it like, I'm sure mold and mildew's got to be a concern too,
That
right?
is an issue. Some customers like to get their boats clean and washed beforehand.
Okay.
Most don't.
Okay. Do you see a difference between the ones that get it serviced before it's wrapped versus?
Absolutely. And it's also very important to time out when you wrap it. You don't want the boat to be wet when you wrap it.
Mhm.
So time and weather is important. Weather is probably the biggest factor when it comes to shrink wrap, and wind is a big factor. If you're trying to shrink down the wrap, and when it's shrinking down, it's getting pliable, so it can move around and stretch. When it cools off, that's when it tightens up. Well, if a wind gust comes in when you're shrinking it down, you get a big bubble, and then you gotta shrink it down again. But yeah, to go back to your question, definitely washing it down and cleaning it. Any mold that could be in there is definitely an important thing if you want to maintain your boat. Cushions, I always recommend pull out your isinglass, pull out your cushions. Those are the first things to get kind of ruined if they sit inside the boat all winter.
Right.
Especially your isinglass, because when you're getting below 30 degrees, they get real brittle.
It gets real brittle.
Very brittle.
Can
Yeah,
only imagine.
absolutely. So.
And is the main purpose of shrink wrapping it basically to keep like snowfall from not building up inside the vessel? Is that the true reason for it? Or?
Yes, absolutely. You don't want water inside the boat, thawing, freezing, thawing, freezing. Obviously, gel coat and fiberglass is porous.
Right.
If you have, excuse me, if you have any stress cracks already, it's gonna make those even worse because the water's gonna get in those cracks. It's gonna expand, contract, and it's gonna damage your boat. And decks get soft, hatches get soft if water sits on them. So it's just a battle against water at the end of the day.
Sure. So Kenny, when you go on site, right, and you're now stripping those down, like generally what is your full procedure, to remove it and then get it prepared for the customer?
I'd probably cut the wrap off first, and then really from there, it's just cutting the entire spine of the frame off. Doing it by yourself is not the way you want to do it.
Not recommend.
Not ideal. You definitely want to have a helping hand with you. And typically we just try to throw it right off the boat, and it's pretty much scrap. Or sometimes we'll even reuse the wood, depending on what boatyard we're working in.
I could see that you could probably reuse the 2x3s.
Not the strapping, really. You can reuse the strapping. So like we do a lot of cross supports in between the 2x3s. So like say you have a 30-foot boat, you got the spine going over at least 2/3 of the way back to the boat, of which you'll have probably 4 posts coming up, like 3 up in the deck or the bow, and 1 in the cabin, and then maybe 1 in the aft as well. So we can reuse the spine for supports in between those 2x3s, or for footings underneath the 2x3s so that they're more sturdy when you're putting them up. But we reuse all the 2x3s. The strapping we just kind of scrap out and reuse in other ways.
No, that makes sense. So you pull off the wrap, right? And then I'm assuming you're doing a maintenance wash generally.
Yeah. So
or sometimes you just pull the wrap, see you later.
It depends, So these areas that we're doing the wrapping at, we're getting contracted out by the yard. So we have to wait until they do their commissioning. They prep everything, get everything ready, because you don't want to detail a boat and then have the tech have to worry about keeping it clean while they're doing whatever they have to do to get the systems ready for the spring. So we'll unwrap it. A lot of times they'll unwrap it too, and then we are more or less the last touch before the customer gets to it. That's ideally. It doesn't always work out that way, but that's what we shoot for.
Gotcha. So we heard a little bit about the history from Kenny so far, like, some of the jobs that he had prior to, meeting up with you. And I'd really love to hear your history before you decided to jump full-fledged into detailing.
Absolutely. So like most people, I started with cars right out of high school.
No, automotive cars.
Yeah. Just for a few years, I worked at a car dealership, and it was just volume cleaning interiors, like no real buffing. And from day one, I had a passion for buffing and paint correction and just making it pop. Very satisfying.
Were you a rotary only kind of guy then too? Because you had DA one out then, right?
That's how I was taught. So this is back in 2012. So all we used was rotaries. I worked in an auto body shop, and it was all just rotaries. But I moved over to the coast and found the first job that I can get, and I was working on boats. Quickly realized that it was very underserved because of the seasonality of it. Right. Not a lot of people are good at it, know how to do it, know the right way of doing it. Right. And so it was something that was enjoyable. The lifestyle is better too. You're outside all day, you're on the water, in the yard, you're not stuck inside. Kind of gravitated towards it. Worked for someone for about 5 years, building up skills, bottom painting, detail, and shrink wrapping. And then after that, decided to go off on my own, utilized and kind of leaned on the relationships that I built over those 5 years. So as soon as I started the business, I was able to lock in a contract and just kind of built it out from there.
So speaking of contracts, I think that's something that a lot of detailers out there don't go after enough. And I know after speaking with you, you've got how many contracts?
We've got 5 now.
Right. So
all within a half mile of each other.
Right. So, if those are out there that are listening and want to getting into building or having contracts, like how would they go about that? What kind of advice would you give those individuals out there?
Just be available. You're probably not going to go in, introduce yourself, and just make yourself available if they need it. If you're in an area where it's seasonal, I guarantee you there's going to be times where they're looking around for, something that popped up last minute.
Right.
And if you're Johnny on the spot, ready to go in there and take care of it for them, that's your foot in the door. and then just work hard, be reliable, and everything will fall into place typically.
So how do you go about negotiating those contracts? Is it is it a handshake agreement? Is it, documented agreement?
Everyone's different. We work with mom and pop marinas where it's like it ends all with one guy or
Yeah.
girl, and that's usually handshake type of stuff. You go into some of the larger dealers that are a little more corporate. There's some contracts involved. The biggest thing is just carrying the right insurance as well, and having the right minimums, which probably depends on your state and whatnot. Yeah, just being readily available, and once you get your foot in the door, you do a good job, you work hard, you bust your ass, and typically more times than not, they'll give you more work.
Yeah. So, I mean, take note of that. There is some extra money, and I think you would agree that that is pretty much what stabilizes your business throughout the year, right?
Absolutely, it's reoccurring work that you can count on.
Almost like a salary.
Almost. We're basically like adjunct employees, which like you got to be courteous of the other guys that are working there. But at the end of the day, it's something that I realize is they all love you, because if you're in there doing a good job, that's something less that everyone else has to worry about. So if you're in there doing the right thing, helping out, someone's moving a boat, give them an extra spot, give them an eye, like anything you can do to go out of your way to help the guys that are working in the yard goes a long way in building relationships. And then, they look out for you, vice versa, and you're basically part of the team, and everyone's interests are aligned, right?
Nice, nice. So, basically yourself and Kenny run the main part of the show, right? So between you two, how many other individuals work for Infinity Marine currently?
So we carry 3 to 4 guys year round. In the spring rush, we'll hire an extra 8 guys. Kenny will run a crew of 3 to 4 guys at our biggest contract, and after that, we do volume, and then the guys that are the best will stick around for the summer. And then we start traveling around. We'll go up to Portland, Maine, the Cape, wherever the nice boats are, and get the dream teams together and do it like that. So it's good because it's something that you can count on and guarantee, which then gives you the ability to scale up over time. And then, like I said, building those relationships when it comes time in the fall, then they want you to do the shrink wrapping, which then gives you consistent work throughout the year, which if you want to be able to retain and hire and retain good employees, you got to be able to keep them busy year round. If someone's good, they want to be working for a good company that's going to keep them busy, right? So being able to have that and offer that is very important.
So Kenny, what would you say is your biggest challenges so far that you faced? Because you're now, a leader amongst other employees too. So what would what kind of advice, or first give me your biggest challenge, and then, what kind of advice would you give other detailers out there to help manage other, other group team members?
I think biggest challenge is every year around this time when we start getting busy, like Eric said, we hire a lot of new people and stuff, and it's trying to mesh well with them and, have some sort of a chemistry when we're working together. Definitely working with, other people. And I think a big thing is trying to figure out what each person is good at in order to manage a crew. So if a person's good at, buffing hulls and they seem like they're, a straightforward person and keep their head down and work a lot, then I might have that person do that. If I notice someone's a little bit more meticulous, they pay more attention to detail, then maybe they'll be doing more of the detailing and a little less buffing. So I definitely think it's, paying attention to what other people are, good at and going from there.
Yeah, for me, like Eric, I'm impressed with his answer, and the reason why I'm going to tell you that is good managers find what the best thing that their team does, what they're the greatest at. So, and really focus and hone in on that. So, I don't think I could have gotten a better answer from a true leader. Seriously, like true leadership identifies where somebody is really good at a particular area and makes them focus on that. You know what I mean? So, man, that's definitely a great answer from there. So again, like you do some shrink wrap, you do some detailing, but you also play with some fiberglass too, right? Fiberglass and gel.
Yeah, we do a
Like
lot of
all
that.
crafts,
We
it
do a
sounds
lot of
like.
that. It's like I said, there's seasonal aspects of the business, so you got to be able to go with the flow
Yeah.
and go with what is coming at you. The East Coast, and especially where we are, is very rocky. People are running aground all the time. So after the spring rush,
So,
leads.
so a lot of qualified captains out there.
Absolutely. So Kenny will go ahead and lead the teams for the detailing for the summertime, and then I'll go around and do repairs. People run aground, people, you know, out drinking, hit their boat into someone else's boat, all that type of stuff. And that really happens during the summertime, and then also the fall when people do haul outs. That's when they decide they want to start addressing those things.
So what got you into doing like fiberglass and gel coat? Because obviously everything was detailing first, right?
Yeah, so I did auto body before boats. And then during those 5 years when I was working for someone else, we did some gel coat fiberglass work as well, like basic stuff, but enough to be able to give you the confidence to start growing your skills. The thing with gel coat and fiberglass is if you make a mistake and mess it up, you can just do it over again. Not efficient, you're going to lose money, but you're going to learn. If you make a mistake, it's nothing that can't be fixed as long as you know what you're doing. So I always say what makes a great detailer is going to make a great gel coat fiberglass guy, because at the end of the day, it's another iteration of sanding and buffing, grind and sand and paying attention to the little small details of what's going on. But then also over time, just having a basic understanding of how boats are built, where stringers are, where bulkheads are, does this area have a core? Is this like a thinner area as well? So as you work on boats more, you start picking up on those things, and then it all kind of comes together. Yeah.
How did you learn or get into the fiberglass side? Did you have a mentor? Did you go to a class?
I had a mentor, all on the job training.
Okay.
Never did any sort of actual training class. I just worked 2 summers doing fiberglass for a gentleman, and yeah, pretty much that was it. A lot of it was just kind of figuring out as you go, and like I said, if you're good at cutting and buffing, then you'll be good at spraying and finishing out gel coat.
What about matching colors though? Because that could be definitely a challenge, especially for up there in the Northeast and stuff like that. What what do you do to match colors?
So I think the most important thing is to set expectations with customers. When you get older boats, yeah, you can color match it, you can get it perfect, but when boats are made, they're getting popped out of a mold. When you spray gel coat, you're putting in additives to make it cure, because gel coat needs your catalyst, your MEKP, but it also needs a wax additive. And what that wax additive does is it raises to the surface of the gel coat so that it eliminates oxygen, and that is what allows it to cure. You don't add that wax additive when it's in the plug of the boat,
Sure.
because it's sealed up.
Right.
So when you're spraying gel coat, you are putting in different chemicals, which are going to oxidize at different rates, which may change colors
I was about to say
10 years down the road. You can get it perfect, you can buff it and blend it perfectly, but if it's a dark color, 10 years down the road, it's probably going to start showing. And it also requires maintenance. If you don't wax your boat at all, it's going to ox faster than the other areas of the original gel coat, and then it's going to show. So
yeah, I'm sure a lot of detailers out there have probably experienced that firsthand where, they'll go to a boat and a lot of parts of the vessel look good. And then there's one particular area that may have oxidized a little bit more than the rest. And a lot of times that's exactly what you're talking about. As somebody that did, a repair and, like you said, some will oxidize faster or oxidize slower. That particular area could actually look better than the rest of the boat, as well. But at the end of the day, you're limited by what that surface is going to give you. Don't detailers out there, don't try to chase perfection when there's been repairs. Try to make it look the best you can.
when you're spraying down gel coat, you're dusting it out, you're blending it out into typically 220, maybe 320.
Yeah.
So the areas that are next to the repairs are going to be thinner than the rest of the gel coat.
Yeah.
So you just got to be careful when you're going over repaired areas, because you don't know how much someone sanded out those areas that they feathered. So I can guarantee you that area is going to be much thinner than the rest of the boat.
Do you play with gel coat on Kenny too, or is you're mainly kind of like more towards just on the restoration side of the detailing side?
I'm more on the restoration side. I mean, I've helped Erik out with numerous gel coat and fiberglass, projects.
What are your thoughts on gel coat then doing that?
It's interesting,
It's a different flow,
Right.
definitely. Like I said, like cutting and buffing, wet sanding, it carries over. So Kenny picked up very fast on blocking out repairs, getting things flush and fared out.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's something that you kind of build up over time, but he's getting there. He's picking up quick.
So Question: DeWalt or Makita? What are you grabbing?
DeWalt.
Ooh, DeWalt guy. What about you, Eric?
The D-wall, but the Festool is probably my favorite rotary.
Yeah, but you just got told me they don't make it
No, they
more.
stopped making them and they're expensive. So I keep mine and yeah, that's just mine only. Everyone else gets the DeWalts.
Yeah, you you better hide that
Yeah,
one,
I
man.
hide it.
Hide it under locking. I've never personally ran one of the festivals.
Yeah, they're awesome.
I've heard some, some good information about them. People speak highly of it, but I personally never ran one. It doesn't look like I'm gonna get to either.
The price point is just too high. The adapter is like is a different millimeter.
I think it's just like a European style.
So you have to get a special ordered 3M double-sided adapter, which the Stark pads fit on that. So so it's either you run the double-sided 3M adapter on it, or you run I think it's like a little 5-inch pad, which for boats, it's like.
They don't have like an adapter to essentially take it from their thread pitch to the stick.
Really? I couldn't, at least I couldn't find anything. I know that they teamed up with 3M to do like their buff and accessories, but obviously they discontinued them. So, I don't think there's any real other options.
Gotcha. One of the questions that I always ask all the detailers that come on here is you're going to have to pick 5 pads, and only 5 pads only to do a boat. First, Kenny, I'm going to ask you what's the 5 pads that you're grabbing if you have to detail a boat?
So I'd probably start with a white wool.
Double-sided or single?
It's double-sided.
Always double-sided. Single-sided for the right occasion, but typically double-sided. I'd have to go with a yellow wool. Double-sided. I'd probably go with purple wool.
The Lake Country.
The Lake Country.
Yep.
Country purple wool. Probably do a Lake Country one for a mini buffer.
Okay. So like the little 3-inch one?
He loves the little mini buffers.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, man. I think that's overlooked too. Is nobody's bringing up the small pads. Hey, we got to get in them tight areas too, fellas.
Absolutely.
I do like it. All right, one more.
Oh, blue wool.
The blue wool. Rotary blue wool.
Right, yeah.
Man, you can tell you're from up north, baby.
Man.
Running with that polished blue wool.
I like the foamed wool because it's got a skinnier pile than the double-sided. But when you're getting,
Are we talking about Lake Country blue foam wool? Or are we talking about blue wool like rotary wool?
I don't know what the Lake Country.
The Lake Country.
Yeah.
So kind of like the purple.
Yeah, similar. Run that on a rotary. It's got a thinner pile, so you can work into like tow rails or around hardware a little bit better. Yep. The double-sided are good for your large areas, but when you're trying to get around things, that pile is gonna prevent you from getting like real tight up to all that hardware and whatnot.
Okay. So to kind of piggyback on your mini wool, right? Recommendation. I love pairing that with Flex's compact 3-inch rotary with the Lake Country extension. I mean, for me, like that is the ultimate mini machine when you're trying to cut in around transom areas or center consoles, like up by the gauges and stuff like that.
Around outriggers.
My God, man, between running that and then, we also carry Buff and Shine's 3-inch yellow wool too, because I'm a big fan of the yellow wool stage as well. And that right there, I think is just overlooked for some detailers that don't have that in their arsenal.
Yeah,
totally necessary.
Yeah,
but
compact, you can just run it with one hand.
Yeah,
you
man.
Flip it on, it stays on. You don't have to worry about a trigger, and
it's reasonably priced for a flex tool.
Absolutely, you just got to use it the right way. You can't put a big pad on it and be buffing large areas. It's gonna burn up. You got to use it where it's necessary. Not for the whole shebang.
I totally agree. So that same question to you, Eric, though, is what the 5 pads that you're going to pick?
We have a pretty similar, I guess, answer because it's like we use a lot of standard operating procedures, but to add to it, obviously we got the double-sided white, the double-sided yellow, and we got the Lake Country purple, but also the money pad is money, and then the purple haze as well. That's a new one that I'm loving as well. So I would say
we got one more.
I do like the microfiber is good. I like the microfiber pad from Buff and Shine, just for laying down sealants. Because it lays it down nice and thin, so you don't oversaturate the sealant or whatever it is you're laying down. Which, you know, more wax is not going to add additional protection.
No, it's gonna give you a shoulder workout, bro.
Just more wax to wipe off. You know, you lay it down nice and thin, assuming that you get all the oxidation out. Otherwise, you're gonna run into some issues with it sticking. But so long as you do a good job pulling out that oxidation and swirls, you lay it down with that, easy wipe off.
Yeah, it's butter. So you talked about, and you just mentioned SOPs, standard operating procedures, and I think those are vital for anybody that wants to scale their business with employees, right? So, you know, what do you essentially, or what does your SOPs currently look like?
Yeah, so I got them laminated, and we got them in a little booklet. That way everyone on site can have them. The SOPs also have, you know, checklists for the detailing steps, like cup holders, metals, compartments, every little thing. Because when you get on a big boat and, you know, you're not familiar with boats or you're new to the industry, you can kind of get lost. There's a lot going on, so it keeps people on task. It allows, you know, everyone to be held accountable at the same time.
Yeah.
But the SOP will basically, and we combine that with the workflow chart. So you'll start with figuring out what the condition is of the boat, of the gel coat and the dirt. And if it meets this condition, then you do this step. If it is a different condition, you start with this step or you skip another step. So it's if or depending on conditions. And it's super crucial when you're hiring, because at least where we are, the people that have a lot of experience but are drifting around, you know, they usually have some sort of story. Sure. And they can't be a reliable person. And I think Kenny is a perfect example, because Kenny didn't have any experience before.
No bad habits.
Yeah, it had the systems, but it's like you can't really teach fundamentals of a good person. Someone that's, you know, reliable, that can communicate well, that shows up on time, that you know, puts in the effort, and just the fundamentals of being a good person and a good employee. When you have SOPs and you have ways to train your employees, now that opens up your options for hiring. Now you can hire a multitude of potential employees and then build them up the way you want, instead of getting someone that has a bad habit, that, you know, has been buffing boats for 20 years but has bad habits and isn't a consistent, reliable person.
Does your SOPs like get all the way down to specifics on machine pad polish?
Yep.
And
The
and
combos.
speed?
Absolutely, because, you know, you have your machine, you got your pads, you got your products. Add those together, you got a bunch of different options. So we try and simplify it. And the Stark product line has been crucial in that, because all boats come in different conditions. Sure. There's a wide range of conditions of boats, and having the Stark product line allows us to get those consistent results even when the condition of the boat varies. So we'll have the white wool with the level R, the RPMs, the passes, and then we'll do like training in person, and they're following along with that, and then watching myself or Kenny do it.
Yep.
Not everyone can just learn by reading things. You gotta be able to see it, and you gotta do it. So we train in that way, and then you know, yellow with the elevate, higher RPMs. And
The lights come on.
yeah, and then, you know, you get your long throws with your finish, your money pad, and your either your finish R, your triple P, or your elevate, depending on the color or sealant from there. So try and keep it simple and streamlined, instead of mixing, you know, this product from this company with this product from this company. Yeah. You're not going to get consistent results doing that.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. You know, a couple of questions that we get here, you know, at the headquarters, especially during the winter time, or, you know, right before the transition to spring, is people are consistently calling us and asking us questions about temperature, and like, hey, can I use this product in this temperature, or what do I do during that time? So like, if you guys wouldn't mind, like, you see a little bit more fluctuation of temperatures in your area, because it goes super cold, and then, you know, it could get 90 degrees up there sometimes throughout the year, right? So like, what do you guys notice, or what maybe do you change in your process, you know, when it's colder versus when it starts warming up?
When it comes to compounding, it's all about the surface temp, and then also the temperature of the material that you're using. So most materials are water-based, so they're going to get thicker as it gets colder, which
Right.
makes it more challenging to work.
Sure.
So sometimes you got to maybe use a little more product, go slower, more passes, and really work it in to build up that surface temperature. And then sometimes you can only do so much. You know, when you're in the 30s trying to detail a boat in 30-degree weather, it's not very fun, but you can still go and compound a boat and get results, but it's going to take a little more time.
So does anybody do like hand warmers on the compound or something like that to keep it warm?
The dash of my truck and blast the heat.
Does that work?
Yeah, heat it up. I do that with my gel coat as well. Sometimes, like if I'm trying to lay down gel coat in colder temperatures, it's risky introducing heat guns, but sometimes you got to do what you got to do. But I'll leave my gel coat inside my truck with the heat blasting. I'll heat up the surface with a heat gun, and then I'll start catalyzing it, but I'll let it sit as it's catalyzing, and then I'll lay it down from there.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it's a bunch of little tricks. Sometimes you don't really have an option where the boats are. You got to kind of play it where it lays, and you got to get creative and come up with solutions.
Any tips from you, Kenny, for cold weather working?
Gloves.
Yeah.
Big gloves guy. Yeah, big gloves guy. Yeah.
Workable gloves. You know, in terms of working,
Yeah.
pay attention to how cold it gets, and whenever you're when you're waxing, that's a big thing I would say, is making sure doing too much waxing in too cold weather.
Yeah. So what would you say your cutoff? Because a lot of times, like I tell people, you shouldn't be doing it in anything below 40 degrees.
Yeah, I like 50. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Anything other than, but like it's a pain working in that temperature. But 50 degrees, anything lower than that, it's like, you're kind of running the risk of things not working the way you want to.
Have you ever experienced like maybe like durability issues from, say, you were faced at one time, you're like, what? Like we got to get this job done. Like it's a little colder, let's get it done. But then, when you go back and revisit it, maybe like on a maintenance and maybe notice a performance difference or
Not too much. Yeah, we haven't really faced that too much. It comes back to setting expectations and just communicating with customers about what you can do, what you can't do, and just not promising them the world when you know that because of the weather conditions, you're not going to be able to do it. So we work within what we think is acceptable within weather.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't work, then we just have to communicate with the customer that we're going to have to do it another way. That way there's no issues down the road.
Gotcha. So the next thing I'm going to ask you is like, what's next for Infinity Marine?
Yeah. So we spent all this time working on boats and building up operating procedures and educating our employees, and we're ready to start passing on that knowledge to everyone else.
Really?
Massachusetts and New England in general, they're kind of still on the up in terms of figuring out the right way to do things.
Yeah, they're still on the good old cleaner wax.
Yeah,
right?
a lot of cleaner wax action, a lot of white wool, finishing with white wools. So, we're ready to start spreading the wealth and setting everyone up for success. So we're going ahead and we're starting a marine detail supply up in Danvers, Mass, Greater Boston area. So we should be making an announcement very soon.
Oh,
And yeah, that's the next step, is setting up a marine detail supply Boston.
look at that. So you guys are hearing that first here on the Detailers Doc podcast. They are officially the new owners of Marine Detail Supply, Greater Boston. That's going to be in Danvers, right? Massachusetts.
Right on the Danvers River.
So brand new building too, correct?
Yeah, brand new building. We're still in the process of building out right now, but hopefully we should be up and running within the next month or so.
Yeah. So like, how has that build out process been so far?
More expensive than I thought.
Oh my God. So talk to me.
But thankfully, I got, my best buddy, he's a carpenter. He's been taking the lead and just helping me build everything out. It was a raw, just, 1,000 square foot, fresh build. So he's been killing it and helping me build everything out in there, hanging shelves, painting everything, installing floors, handrails, all that type of stuff. So thankfully we've been attacking it all February, where things are a little bit slow. We've been hustling for sure.
Kind of talk about like what brought you to make the decision to come aboard to open your own marine detail supply company.
Absolutely. I mean, you guys have been killing it. You're doing something that not many others, or if any, are doing, becoming an industry standard. And I would like to fall in line with that. And I believe in the Stark product line. It's what has helped get us to the next level in our detailing profession. And I've also realized that, you know, being was in my 20s, thinking that we can do everything, right? We can do all the boats, like let's do more and more and more. Then you get to a point where it's like, you can only do so much, but there's still so many more boats that can be done. And I think setting everyone up for success is just a great opportunity that has presented itself to us. So pushing the knowledge and the systems that we've developed using the Stark line, along with the other products as well that a Marine Detail Supply carries.
Right. Yeah. So if I'm not mistaken, too, you are a prior graduate of a Stark certification course back in the day with Michael.
Yeah, Mike Marino down there in Tampa back in like 2021, 2022.
Talk to me about that a little bit.
That planted the seed. I was like, this is cool. Like, this is something new. You know, had been detailing at that point for, 8 years or so, but you pick up on new things, and, you got to stay humble and always know that there's many ways to do things. And it kind of expanded my horizon and planted the seed that, like, this is something that I kind of want to try and pursue over the next couple years. So
That's what's exciting. And for me, like now, those guys and gals that are up in the Northeast will have an opportunity to potentially attend a Stark certification course in Danvers, Massachusetts, instead of coming down here to Florida. Now, granted, I know
Florida's not bad.
Florida's not bad. I mean, neither is South Carolina and everywhere else that we are hosting them. We have them in Ohio too. But like now the Northeast of the United States will have the opportunity to be closer to a potential course to give them, just get them away from that cleaner wax.
Yeah, get away from that.
So please get them away from that cleaner wax, and not just like the marine aspect. As you know, like we cater to automotive too.
Absolutely.
So we have some really good automotive brands such as, Kosh Cami, 3D, PNS, Car Candy, which have been really beneficial for the automotive guys and gals that are out there to help build up their business, just like all the other marine brands that we carry throughout throughout the store. So again, like I think what's going to be good for you is you have some automotive prior knowledge, right? So you should be able to relate to those that come into the building and such like that. I'm so excited to have you guys on. Like Kenny, I mean, I can see in short term, like the growth that you had. I look forward to seeing what you got, moving forward. Like, so talk to me about your, where you stand on, being a part of the Marine Detail Supply, family as well.
It's definitely something new to us. And it's something I want to learn more of, I care a lot about the products we use, and if it can help other boat owners and other people in our area take care of their boats, and, hopefully it goes good,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
No, for sure. I think you guys would agree, and most of them, y'all out there that are listening, like we're really passionate about helping the industry as a whole, and that's something that Marine Detail Supply, I think, delivers amongst anybody else throughout the industry. Like if a DIYer has a question, a professional has a question, we're going to do absolutely everything that we can to help them, work through it. Right. So with that, like, how are they where's the address going to be at? We didn't even talk about the address.
28 Harbor Street.
Harbor Street.
Harbor.
Aren't you from Mass?
Harbor Street, yeah. Once you get a couple drinks, then the Boston accent comes out, right?
That is not what it is.
That is what it is. Yeah, 28 Harbor Street, Danvers, Mass, Unit 6, the Black Bay, all the way to the right.
The Black Bay all the way to the right. So again, like, I appreciate you boys coming aboard. I appreciate you coming on to the podcast. Hopefully, any of you out there that have any questions at all that are up in the Danvers, Massachusetts area, reach out to Kenny and the rest of the team. Like, they're going to be, just as helpful as all of us here at the Fort Myers. And, we look forward to hosting the first ever Stark certification course in Danvers, Mass. With that, again, feel free to listen and follow on Spotify or YouTube. You can watch or listen to these episodes. And again, if anybody out there interested in coming to Fort Myers and doing it here in person or hosting it remotely, reach out to us.
Awesome.
Awesome.